Welcome back, everyone. Welcome back. I'm so excited to be here. You know what? Whenever we start a live, I literally get the first sound of my voice. I'm hearing the sound of my voice and I'm like, whoa, calm down, lady. But I am. I'm excited to be here, especially talking about what we're talking about tonight because it's something that is near and dear to my heart. Kind of like what I've been obsessed with over the past at least 6 or 7 years. And that's just about like consistency and just trying to be better wherever I can. But there are some things that I found out along the way. Some of these things that we're going to go over tonight are just ideas and concepts I've taken out of books. I've obviously done some research just with this video, but there have been books that I've read over the years actually that are behind me. Atomic Habits. There's um there's a few of these ones we're going to talk about here. Tiny Habits by BJ Fogg, Tiny Experiments, and a lot of other ones, right? And certainly Atomic Habits, one of my I don't read the entire book every year, though I should, but I definitely revisit it several times throughout the year and just re-familiarize myself with some of the concepts. So you're gonna see some information that you may have heard of before. And I always like to give credit where credit deserves to be given. So yeah, but let's get into it. Listen, welcome to Yes, I'm a Unicorn. And I think today's topic is something that we probably all struggle with, which is trying to stay consistent. I think, it's definitely something that once you've mastered it, it seems easy, but it's definitely hard in the beginning. And I think we are consistent at certain things, but maybe they're just not giving us the results that we want, right? So we're going to talk about why is it so hard to stay consistent even when we really want to. And we're going to talk about the fact that it's not that we don't care. It's not that we don't have goals. It's more of like we have to develop a system. And that's the thing that I always get caught up on. And when people say, oh, you have to develop systems, it's like, yeah, what does that look like? Right. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about how I've developed systems and what has worked for me. um, but yeah, if you're new here, my name is Faith. This is Yes, I'm a Unicorn. We like to talk about planners, analog systems. I'm big on analog systems. I'm the person that's gonna tell you, get you out a notebook, get you a nice pen that you like to write with. But there are some times where I'll say, we all work in digital systems too. It's just like, hey, listen, we're going live right now. This is like a digital system. But I'm big on analog systems, writing stuff down, using our actual hand to write things down and making progress visible. That's what I'm really about. Um, I'm somebody's mother. I'm somebody's wife. I'm a creative person, but I'm also like, I wouldn't call myself type A necessarily, even though some of the people that I work with would. Um, but I'm just like, how can we do this and have fun and make sure everything got done? That's like how I would say it. Um, but yeah, we all just want to make progress. It's not about like being a productivity guru or saying like, oh, it has to be done like this. Wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning, or you're a goner. It's like we gotta live the way we live. What comes natural to us, it has to be incorporated, and the things that we care about obviously have to make themselves show up in our day. Like we're just, I feel like we might be doing this a little wrong. I know I've done it wrong in the past. And when I found more information, I was able to construct a system that worked for me. But it's not going to be perfect. It's never going to be perfect. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. But yeah, it's not like you're going to be consistent and it's going to last forever. Like I think it happens where you have to reset through seasons. But if you are in a place where you feel like you can't stick to anything or you know what to do, but you just don't do it, I can help you with that. And so, and then I'll show you the system that I'm using and how it's working for me. And I'll kind of break down some of the things that I live by that help me develop the system. Now, I'm not going to go into all the system development here in this video, but we're going to touch on it a little bit. Um, but yeah, and if you are curious about where you can go and well, we'll talk about that later because we haven't even got into it, y'all. Um, right now I'm gonna transition over to show you, I love some slides. I'm gonna show you this presentation I put together because I love just to talk about like what the science is first, and then we'll go into the solution. Um, so let's get started. Okay, so this is a fun little spreadsheet that I love. Not spreadsheet. It's a fun little presentation that I put together with Notebook LM, which is one of my favorite things to use in terms of AI because it just really works for me. Um, but yeah, I put together a little something so we can have a visual component to what we're talking about. I like it. I think you like it. But yeah, the consistency comics, and I love me a good comic strip. That's why I put that on there. But we're fighting this battle of consistency with the wrong weapons. Like I said, there were years, and I don't know if I did say this, but years would go by where I knew I had everything like memorized, like, okay, I know all this information and I'm ready to run with it. And, and then life would happen and I would find myself on the other side of, wanting to implement some strategy or something and just not being able to say that I could do it. And I knew had the capability, but it was just something in me had to click. So there were specific pieces of information that helped me to actually learn how to build a system around what my life looks like. And now I've been able to be consistent. I mean, I can't even really go back and say how long I've been able to be consistent because a lot of the things that I've now acquired that took me years to do, just, in terms of work projects and even just moving up the ranks at my job and just being a consistent deliverer of value there. It took for me to learn some of these things. And also, um, you know, listen, pregnancy is not consistent. I can't even claim that because God did that. But we recently became homeowners. That was a whole process we had to be consistent with. Doing a podcast, and I'm actually doing a more than one podcast. Um, and just being consistent with my content as I have been more recently. I've fallen into a groove and I understand what it takes. And I'm going to share some of that with you tonight. But first, let's get into like what's actually happened and why I'm going to tell you you're not broken. If you can identify with any of those things that I said and you can understand that um it's not you. I mean it's you, but we're going to figure out, what piece of it is not clicking. So okay, we're going to talk about this because a lot of times what we do is we'll give ourselves a guilt trip, and I just described some of my sort of history with struggling with it. Like so, for instance, I would buy a course or I would buy a thing, and they would deliver value, right? A webinar, I would attend something, I would learn some new thing, and I would say, okay, I'm going to apply this information. I'm going to do this thing that I was told that I've purchased, and here's what's interesting. Someone could have the best course set up and give you all the information, or you could read a book and have all the information. It's not even a book sometimes. You can go online and piece together a bunch of information. And have the information, but then you don't act on it, right? So this is kind of going on that. And so you get amped up when you got the information, you got the plan already. You're like, yeah, I'm ready. I'm ready to be successful. And then you start the thing and it doesn't work for you right away. And then you kind of beat yourself up and it's just like, I don't think I can do this, right? And a lot of times we just right back to the drawing board. Like we didn't even stop to consider like what tweaks could I make to make this actually work. And so if you're trying to, that's one thing that we're doing that doesn't work is we're trying to use willpower to get us through and say like, okay, I'm gonna make myself do this thing, and I have all the information, so I should just be able to use it and it works. But there's some things missing from there. You haven't taken into consideration like what resources you're already using just to maintain your life, right? Like this particular comic strip picture is showing somebody who wants to be healthier, wants to work out, wants to eat better, and they haven't set themselves up for success. So he's running on a treadmill, right? It's so funny because the comic actually looks really like a fit person, but it's a comic strip. We're just gonna go with it. Um, but you can't just start something and think you're gonna be, top tier performing at it, especially if you've never done it before or if you haven't done it recently, you don't have your life set up around success. So that's thing number 1 that we do wrong. Um, and then we talk about the willpower. Now that's kind of connected to what you think you're gonna just go and and you got the information now. You're just gonna let it rip, and we're gonna get this thing going. Now there is something to be used there, right? Because a lot of times we get this like motivation, which is a taboo word. We get this motivation and we want to use that. That can propel you to do some things, but it's not going to last. So you have to set things up to move beyond that when the motivation is not there. The other thing we just think we're going to have is willpower. We're going to be able to combat all of the difficulty and the adversity, and we're just going to struggle through it. Now sometimes you can do this, right? But I think a really good percentage of us don't even take into account where our energy is going and what other things we have in place in our lives already that are going to fight against this new thing we want to start. Right? So we're trying to be consistent with something and we're not even taking into account that a lot of our energy and other resources, our time are going to just maintaining our normal life. So that's something that we're going to address later too. But it's something too that society makes us believe is that you should be able to do this. I think, the most pervasive way that this is displayed is with finances. Because like on the one hand, they show these commercials of these like really, well-dressed people walking into banks and getting loans or, starting businesses and oh yeah, and they don't show any of the stuff that goes before that. So, if you don't understand certain things about what you're getting into, you're just not going to be prepared enough to be successful. But then also there's a lot that you have to have set up and like, so when we talk about finances, one of the things I find really interesting is on the one hand, there's this expectation that everybody should be using their money, according to, living beneath their means. But then we're marketed to every moment of the day, right? And you want to have the latest, um, most productive apps, and you want to have the latest technology. Oh, you need a new computer, you need a new phone, right? Oh, there's just certain things that are happening, and then we're not even gonna talk about gas prices, but there's certain things that are happening, and we're not taking into account what it costs us or what we're gonna have to sacrifice before we decide we wanna do a new thing or we wanna be consistent at something. I'm just using that as one example. The example it looks like they're using here, a lot of it has to do with fitness, but we have to take into consideration that it's like self-control is yeah, we're gonna need that, but then also we're gonna have to set up around what's actually happening in our utilization of our resources. So that's something that we're gonna get into more when we get into the solutions part of it. But that's another reason, willpower. It's a willpower myth. And then um a lot of the things that we choose are already habits and we're not even making decisions on it. So a lot of times we just go into default mode. I call it default mode because I suffer the most from this with scrolling. And I'm not even like an avid scroller. Like I'm not, I've seen people with a worse habit. And a lot of times, especially over the last 3 or so years, I've been, I won't like, I'm not, I don't go on like social media diets or anything like that because I'm not that seriously using it, but I consciously will put my phone down. Like I don't need one of those blackout apps. I don't need something to tell me how much time I spent on something. But it is interesting how like natural it is for us to pick up our devices. Like, oh, I'm gonna pick up my phone and this is gonna, you don't even know what you're picking it up for. Sometimes you pick it up and you go do something else totally different. And 20 minutes later, you're like, oh, I forgot to do what I said I was gonna do. So, but yeah, we don't take into account that a lot of the things that we do on a regular basis aren't even conscious choices. How many times have you been driving somewhere thinking, okay, I'm going to go over here, I'm going to drive here, and then you get lost in your thoughts and you're driving in a whole nother direction, like you're going somewhere that you're just used to driving to? And it's because our conscious mind takes over. I'm sorry, our conscious mind is not available sometimes. Our subconscious mind takes over. And so the hard way to do it is to say, I'm going to be present all the time. I'm going to make all these good decisions right in a row. And I'm going to do it like this. And this is how it's going to go. It's going to go the perfect way that I designed it. And that's like that's the hardest way. That's the hardest way to do it, is to say, I'm gonna decide all these things, um, and I'm gonna make perfect choices. It's like you could design your environment around making the best choices and make certain things like easy to choose. And so that's another thing, is like environment, but just really just making the choice to make hard choices is not the best choice. Like you're gonna make it easier on yourself. And that'll be the probably the best direction for you to go in. And so here we get into systems, right? So meet your operating system. We all have our own ways of dealing with things, but a lot of us are so comfortable just figuring it all out on our own. Listen, I am a testament. Listen, I'm not trying to lecture anybody, because I do the same thing. And then I turn around and I'm like, okay, you can't pray and worry. And I'll just go back into praying. And then I go back into worrying. It's like a cycle. But we don't realize what we're doing. So this is why I like to journal, because I'll let myself express myself on the page, and then the page doesn't lie. There's times where my brain is connected to just expression and just being the essence of me. Like I'm just constantly focused on, like when I'm writing something down, I'm not focused on everything. I'm focused on a few thoughts that I'm trying to express on the page. And when I say constant, I mean that because I've made a habit of just making time to express my thoughts, express my feelings, express what's happening right now in the moment, and talk about, like, and this is to myself on paper. So I'm expressing myself and I'm saying, like, here's what I'm experiencing, here's how that feels, here's what I'd rather be experiencing. Sometimes I'll do what I call the flip it method. And it's like, I don't like this feeling. What would the opposite be? And then I'll describe that, right? So that's kind of like a visualization, but it's all writing. But a lot of times we'll sit here like this figure on the left here and just have it all in our minds and think we're going to fix everything. I do want to say this: you got to give your anxieties to God. I'm not going to lie. I forget to do it sometimes, but that's why writing things down really helps me, because I could literally write something down and I'll hold that thing up and be like, especially when I'm planning something, I'll give it to God and be like, bless these plans, because if you don't want me doing this, and I don't want to be focused on it. But anyway, here we talk about some of the brain science, what the prefrontal cortex is, which, y'all, I am not some neuroscientist. Even though I do listen to Andrew Huberman, who does talk a lot about the brain. And I feel like I'm an expert, because before that, I love Joe Dispenza. Joe Dispenza is like one of the most fascinating people to me, and I could just his voice to me is like I could just get entranced listening to Joe Dispenza talk about the brain and the function of the brain and all that. But so I do know a little bit, but I'm not saying I'm an expert here. But we'll just talk about what is on the page here. The prefrontal cortex, the role is to be the executive and to make the decisions. And this is the conscious thinking that we were talking about on the last slide. Now, this drains very quickly. So you're making these you know, high stress scenario like decisions, and it doesn't even have to be where the stakes are high, but your prefrontal cortex is using up a lot of that energy. So the more, like, if you guys sit there and make 12 like rapid fire decisions, or you could just have to make some big decisions back to back to back to back, that's not you're not going to be able to do that for long, because it's really draining your energy. And so the basal ganglia is like what happens in the background. It's kind of like it doesn't really use that much energy. It just kind of like flows and goes, and it's like the thing that would have, when you do get in the car and you're just driving and you're like, okay, you tell your brain, take me to the store, and you know how to get there. You don't necessarily have to be like, I'm going to make this left and I'm going to turn here and then I'm going to, it's like your body already knows what to do. Your brain already knows what to do. And so which one would you choose, right? Obviously you can see right here, you don't want to be a robot, but it's like you can see which system works better. right? Which part of the system works better? You don't necessarily want to be using your prefrontal cortex all the time. And in fact, your body wants you to make more habit make like your body doesn't want to use all that energy. It wants to preserve the energy, and it's also trying to protect you, which is where that anxiety and worry comes from. But really, the best bet that you have to be consistent is to set up your operating system so that you don't have to make a bunch of hard decisions or tough like decisions that you especially that you don't normally make, because it's just going to overload your system and you're not going to be able to do it, and then you're going to find yourself inconsistent, as we've done all before. So this isn't like me saying I figured it out and you need to follow after me. I'm still learning this stuff. And it's funny how we get all this information and then we know it. And then you still, if you don't have a system set up, you're still not acting on it, right? It's just like, yeah, I know all this. And you really have to set your system up for success. You have to set your system up for your success. And it's not going to look the same way for everybody. But if you know some of these things that keep you out of step of consistency, you have a better chance at setting up a better system. So, okay, this is like the prefrontal cortex thing, right? And it gives you this time. I think we're going to go over in another slide about like the time of day when you make decisions, but oh, maybe that's this one, right? So like you get up in the morning, you have to choose what you're wearing. That's costing you 20% of your battery. Then you go into traffic and you got to do all of this to just survive the traffic and make all these decisions in traffic, and you're using all this energy, and then your battery drops 40%. Now you got to go and decide what's for lunch, right? And this is funny because part of my systems are, I don't commute like that. Like a lot of times I'm working from home, but when I do commute, I love to take public transit because it's a no-brainer. It's like, okay, I'm just gonna get here, sit here, listen to my podcast or whatever I want to listen to. Even like if I'm doing some work, that's fine and help me out for when I get to the office. But like, I know already what I'm gonna eat for lunch. I likely let on my clothes the day before. Like, I'm going into that day differently. And the same thing with working out. Like, this is one of the reasons why I really like to work out in the morning, even though it hadn't been working out for me and I had to switch it up. But it's like a no-brainer. Like I get up and yeah, I don't want to go to the gym, right? That's gonna be there. Okay, doesn't matter. Like, I got all my stuff set out, right? It's just like, okay, but all I gotta do is just go brush my teeth. And all I gotta do is just grab my, thing and I'm already dressed and now my bag is already packed. And so we're out the door before I can even think about it. And so these are like the systems that I have set up for myself by learning to put all these things in place. But what this one is saying is the one of the reasons that we're not able to keep a consistency is because we keep putting all these hard decisions on ourselves. And as the day goes on, you're draining that battery. And so, this one it basically says that, oh, 6 p.m. it's time for you to work out. You're not going to be able to make a great decision after you had to waste all your energy making other decisions all day and using that prefrontal cortex. So that's why you should have systems set up that support you being consistent where you want to be. So this is a study that was done. This is talking about a study that was done on a man who he has severe amnesia, but like he could execute daily routines without even thinking about it. So he had amnesia, but his body would do what it needed to do. And this is not related, but it reminds me of something I saw where on a show where this woman was, oh, it was a movie. It's probably people probably know what I'm talking about, but this lady, she had Alzheimer's, but she was playing the piano. So she couldn't remember like who her family members were necessarily, but she's playing the piano as if, she remembered the music. Her fingers knew which keys to hit because her body was like flawlessly executing this thing that she had done so many times. So habits can get deeply encoded, and then you don't even need your conscious mind, your prefrontal cortex to tell you what to do, right? It's just like your mind could be totally empty and your body is just going, and that's when you've already developed the habit. Now it takes about, I want to say, like 12 weeks, but I think it's different for everybody. But with my system, I use a 100-day system, which is roughly about 14 weeks. And by the end of my 100 days, I pretty much like somewhere in the middle of there, I've gotten it together. But some of it in the beginning and the middle is kind of like a struggle. But that's why I'm going to show you towards the end like what works for me and invite you to, join me. But yeah, this is more about the habit loop. And this is something that I remember reading in the James Clear book, Atomic Habits. Like the cue triggers the loop, right? You get the cue, you go into the routine, and then you get the reward. And it's funny though, because the reward is not even as great as you really are desiring it to be. The anticipation of the reward is the exciting part. But this is why I reward myself even um with writing. So I know that at the end of my habits or the end of something that I'm trying to be consistent about, I'm going to write about it and I'm going to get the chance to express my feelings. I'm going to express what I thought, what actually occurred, which is also me being accountable, but I'm going to express like how I feel about it, how far I think I've come. And like that connective like routine of me experiencing a thing and then getting to write about it afterwards, it's not only like rewarding me, but it's also leaving me a track record so that I can see what's working and what's not. And if something is not working, what I need to do about it so I can reduce the probability that I'm going to fail. So that's something that I'll talk about in um at the end of this. But also, this is another thing that we expect that, and this is where the 8 to 12 weeks science comes in. But like I said, uh, I'm not even thinking about the time. Once I set up my system, I'm just like focusing on the system, focusing on running my experiment, focusing on writing my things out, and I'm focused on my sections of the day, right? Like, where am I in the day? You get 1,000 minutes every day. Where am I, and what do I need to do at this point? And what is the biggest priority? Because maybe it's not something that I planned, but I'm just focused on having a beautiful day as much as I can control. And you do that over and over, and then 12 weeks just passes you right by, but you have progress. You're not thinking about, you might be visualizing an ideal outcome, but you're not thinking like, I'm going to be successful at this tomorrow. Now, there's something to that. So this is about the plateau of latent potential and how people underestimate how long it takes to get to their destination, to their desired outcome. And sometimes they quit right before the breakthrough would happen. This is why once I set my direction, I'm just focused on the experiment because you don't know what you're going to learn in the middle of your journey. You think about like what a hero's journey is, where you have a person who has, a dream or a goal, and then you see where the friction identifies itself, and they have this big problem that they have to overcome. And if you think of yourself as the sort of like star of that movie, um you already know that you're going to run into some adversity, that things are not going to be easy, that you're going to have to figure something out along the way, but you're not even yet the person who can walk up and get that ideal outcome. You have to grow and become the person along the way. And that's really the thing that we should start to look forward to, because it's not like we're going to be able to skip that in any way. It's not like we're going to be able to skip through and surpass that in any of the realms of our lives where we want success. So it's like, you know how they say, get comfortable being uncomfortable? I'm not saying that. I'm saying let's find a delight in running an experiment. Let's be delighted by just making sure that we are following the systems that we set up for ourselves. And that's the thing. And then like repeating. And then the time will pass. And if you're running those systems, you're going to get the reward, or you're going to get something better than you thought you did. But even if you don't even get exactly what you thought you would get, you're going to get some information that's going to help you build from that plan and get what you need at that point. Because sometimes we go through this and we think, we start out wanting one thing, and then once we learn more about who we are and what we're, desiring, that's when we start to realize, oh, well, I'm going to shift, because I really, this experiment taught me this about myself or about what I was reaching for, and now I really want this. So it's really all about the process. People say that all the time. Some of these words, it's like you've heard them before, but The point is, we need to stop fighting like what our brain is doing, what our body wants to do, and we just need to design around what makes sense. So we're going to go through a couple of like scientific behavior designs. And as you can see, this blueprint that this cartoon is holding is talking about automating systems, reward pathways, trigger points. These are some of the things that I've read in the books that I mentioned earlier. But I'm just going to make it even more simple, right? Because like part of my thing is, why are we not designing our life around what's actually happening, right, on a regular basis? Like wherever I end up doing eventually, it's going to start with me being right here where I am. So let's start there, which is why one of the things that really helped me was to just start seeing, where is my time even going right now? And let me make some decisions starting there. But you'd be surprised how much we think we're doing something, or how much time we think we're spending on something. And when you actually break it down, you're like, wow, I didn't even know that was going over there. So that's where I start with it, but that's where design starts from in my mind. Um, but yeah, so this is kind of showing the amateur's path versus the architect's path. The amateur is gonna, use all that prefrontal cortex energy and try to get, not have everything set up, and they're gonna try to get through their day and get the goal that they want to do based off of not being prepared, and they're going to think they're just going to get up and do it and use willpower and self-control and motivation, and that's not probably going to happen. And if that's what you're relying on, it's likely that you have not been able to be consistent. Now look, there's outliers. There's always going to be a different, like someone who goes against the grain, and like beats the system. I'm not saying it's impossible to do it that way. And in fact, there have been times in my life where there's been so much adversity that I enjoyed the struggle, that I'm like, oh, I'm about to do this, right? And I wanted to be mad, and it helped me. But for the most part, especially when you have more than one thing going on in your life, it's just more practical to just set yourself up with a system. Reduce your decision fatigue. Blah, blah, blah. Reduce your decision fatigue by just setting up some stuff beforehand. And it just takes a little bit of forethought. But I like to do a whole system like coding design method that we won't get into this video, but I will talk about it more in the upcoming videos. One of the things that I like, and actually have a couple of versions of this, is the if then override. So basically you're saying, if this happens, then I'll do this, right? Because you're just kind of visualizing, instead of visualizing that everything's going to go perfectly to plan, you're saying, okay, something's going to pop up. If something pops up, what am I going to do to get through it so that I can actually get there? And so in that last slide, and I'll go back, we talk about, okay, when I get up in the morning, I'm going to find my workout clothes. If I can't find my workout clothes, then I probably will wanna go back to bed if it's early enough, and I don't, and I start thinking about how hard the workout is gonna be, and I haven't worked out, right, in a long time, and it's like, "This is gonna be hard anyway," and I can't find my clothes. That's a reason for you to just, abandon the plan. But what could you do in advance, right? So you're going to have all of your workout gear set up, whether you're going to do a home workout or you're going somewhere to the gym or whatever. You have your plan, you know exactly what you're going to do. You're going to make sure it makes sense to you. And for me, it's having my clothes laid out, it's having my workout space ready, and just getting out the door. That's what I be thinking to myself, especially when it's time to go on a walk, or before when we were going to the gym. I'll be like, get out the door, just get out the door. And then all the things that will pop up in my mind, like, okay, but you got to brush your teeth, you got to wash your face. Okay, fine. But this is all a part of getting out the door, get out the door. And we will be out of the door within 10 minutes of waking up. Before I could even be like, oh, I don't want to do this or whatever, we're already on our way to the gym. And it's like, yeah, that's what I needed. Sometimes less than 10 minutes. Because at one point I started wearing my workout clothes to bed, and which was very helpful. And then it's just like shoes by the door, gym bag packed. I know exactly what video I'm watching when I get there, because I used to go to the gym and take my iPad, or take my phone, and I would set it up, and I would do my workout. Like first I would get on the anyway, we're not talking about that. But I would have everything that I needed already ready. And then it was like, okay, it's a no-brainer. And then several weeks and months passed, and I think I've lost like 30 pounds in like, it was something crazy. It was like 30 pounds in like 2.5 months or something. It was like So easy because at that point I wasn't focused on like I need to lose this weight. I wasn't even thinking about how much weight I wanted to lose. I was just like, I got to get out the door, right? And it wasn't every single day either. It was like maybe 4 times a week, 4 or 5 times a week. It was like we would go on walks or go to the gym. It's like get out the door, get out the door. That's what I was thinking to myself. And this is what they're saying is the cheat code. So let's go back over that scenario that I just talked about. If I get up and I can't and I want to get back in bed, then I'm going to tell myself just get out the door, right? If I get up and um I don't know, what I'm going to wear, then this. Well, I switched that up because I was like, my clothes are either laid out on the chair or I'm already wearing them. So it's like if this happens, then I'm going to do this. And then sometimes you can think to yourself, this ain't going to happen because I'm going to make sure, right, that this is already set. And yeah, that's how you do that. That's the if then. The whoop generator is, oh yeah, the wish, the obstacle. Okay, in the plan. I have a different way of doing this, and I'm gonna tell you about it real quickly, but we'll touch back on this too in a later video. But what I like to do is I like to use the flip it method because I like to think about and it's my method that I came up with, but I like to think about all the things that could go wrong. Whenever I think of a goal, I think, of course, I want to visualize the best outcome, and I'm thinking of that scenario. But then I take myself to another place of like, well, what if it all went wrong? What if it got worse? Right? What actions would have led me there? What if I do nothing? How bad could it get? And I'm like doing that so that I could understand and identify what could happen so that it does a couple of things so that I can understand that like, okay, if I do nothing, it's likely that it'll get worse. So I have to do something differently. And if it goes great, then I'll have this great outcome to look forward to. But I can't just leave it there because if especially if I haven't been being consistent about it, the likelihood that I'll continue to do more of the same is so great that I have to identify the other side. And the way that I came up with the flip it method was the opposite way, right? Because like sometimes you can only think negatively. It's like I want to think about a time where rich and slender and this and all this happening, but I can only think about being broke and angry or whatever, right? Okay, well lean into that, right? So lean into that. What is it like to be miserable and broke and mad at everyone? What does that look like? What are you wearing? Right? What are you eating that day? And you really put yourself there using all your senses, taste, feel, right? What does it sound like? And then just be in the misery of that if that's the only place you can go, and then flip it and say, okay, well, that's the worst it could get. Or, it's a pretty bad place that I can easily access because a lot of times our minds are just used to like handling the negative. And then you flip it and you say, okay, well, what if it looked differently than that? And what actions are parallel with that? Right. So this is what I'm saying. It's positive thinking isn't enough. You have to look and see what the other side looks like, so that you could like get your plan a little more realistic so that you can have some system like elements set up. So when you do hit some sort of adversity, you know what to do. Right. So, and I didn't even this wonderful, brilliant woman who came up with this wish, outcome, obstacle plan thing. She knows exactly what she's talking about, but I didn't even go over her framework. So apologies. But you could always look up the Whoop framework, WOOP, and you can figure that out for yourself. But it's on a lot of this information that we have access to a lot of the stuff that I'm going over, I feel like people already know this. But I'm getting ready to say what works for me and what to do about it. Okay, this is important too, the identity shift, because James Clear talks about this, and I love the way he speaks about it. You know, when we consider ourselves to be a practitioner at something, like he uses he uses a couple of examples. Um, I'm gonna come up with one of my own, right? Okay, so let's use this content creation thing. When you sit there and you say, I want to have a YouTube channel or I want to create content, and you think of yourself like some amateur who doesn't know what they're doing, it's not going to be as simple. I mean, nothing is super simple like that. But when you start to think, I'm a content creator, and I get to learn every day, right? Then that positions you in a little bit better of a headspace to be able to follow through and say, well, I'm a content creator. So whatever content creators go through, I'm equipped for that. And maybe it's something that I'm learning along the way that I didn't know as a beginner content creator. But if you're saying to yourself, I'm trying to do this, I'm trying to become a content creator, you're not gonna, be able to last long with that sort of mentality. Whereas if you say, I am a practicing content creator, I create content, that's who I am, that's what I do, right? Now you're saying, okay, well, I already embody the spirit of this, being. And so what do I do? Right now, it's more of you taking it on as like, I'm doing this. I'm already doing this, which frees up some of that energy that we talked about, the prefrontal cortex. The prefrontal cortex thinks that you're trying to do something. It's kind of like exploding, it's overwhelmed. But if you're saying, I'm already this, and now, we're just going to do what I need to do. Now you can kind of relax a little bit, use some of that energy on learning the behaviors, which is why, and I'm going to keep talking about this, which is why it makes so much sense to me, especially when you're learning something new, to take a couple minutes after you execute a process to write down your experience and write down what you feel about it. Because then you're going to see that you not only have like the capacity to do this thing, but when you look back at the story that you're basically writing over several weeks, you got the proof now. And some of these things you're going to forget, but if you write it down in the moment after you just completed a task or a project, you're going to look back and see, like, I am that guy. I am that guy. I am that lady who does this. So anyway, more about that later. um, so yeah, we already talked about the cue, the routine, and the reward. But the science basically points to the same truth on, like, stop using your conscious mind. Like, you have to rely on something else. You have to set some things up in advance so that you don't have to constantly figure out the plan as you're going along. And so all this is to say that, like, hey, you need a plan. And listen, you're not broken. And we all have gone through this, and we will continue to, encounter new elements in our lives and new frontiers that we are trying to understand and become and break through. And we're always going to have to come back and figure out this information. But one of the things that I think is cruel is when we tell ourselves we're not good enough, when we're just doing the wrong steps. Right? You're playing the wrong game. You're not broken. You're not silly. You're not stupid. You just, it's not that you can't be consistent. It's that you just weren't looking at the right elements. You didn't understand how to build a system around your life. And so this is a really funny slide right here, because this character is just whooshing through over the valley of disappointment. They surpass all of the pain of being disappointed because they had a plan, and they designed their environment to exist where they can be consistent and they can learn along the way. So consistency isn't something that you just automatically have. Although I will say this, you're consistent at something. It's so funny because me and my sister talk like this all the time. And one of the conversations I remember us having is like, look, you might think, I need to be consistent at this. I can't be consistent. You consistent at something. You're consistently making the choices that got you here, you know? So you're doing something. And it is like one of those things where I used to be consistently like 20 minutes late. I'm always 20 minutes late. I'm always 20 minutes late. I actually got on the other side of that. Ironically, when I got a job that they didn't care, they're like, we don't care when you get here. Just get your work done. And then I started being on time. And then started being important to me, like, be on time. Like, I need to get there by 8 so I can do this and that. And it's like, in an environment where I used to work when I was in hospitality, it's like, oh, they're tracking you in the door. Like, if you a minute late, oh, you know what I'm saying? You're going to have consequences, which I'm not mad at that. But I used to be consistently like 15 or 20 minutes late. And then, over time I realized, like, I'm consistent. Like, it's not like, oh, sometimes I'm 30 minutes late, sometimes I'm 50 minutes late, sometimes I'm 10 minutes late. It was consistent. I will always be looking like, dang, I'm here again, 15 minutes. You know what I'm saying? It's like clockwork. So you are being consistent somehow. You're consistently doing the things that have gotten you where you are currently, where you've landed. That goes the same for me. I want to change some things in my life. I know that I have some goals that I have. Now I've put my effort in specific places, and I've seen the returns on those investments of energy and time. So I'm excited about that. But I know I can be consistent at other goals that I have because I'm consistently doing the things that got me where I don't want to be. So we're not talking about willpower. We're not talking about none of that. We're talking about meeting yourself where you are. And we're not broken. We're just, paying attention to the wrong things. So, okay, back to this. Oh, I think that's the end of it. Okay, so now I can show you. Now let's have a face-to-face conversation. So we went through that whole presentation. I love doing this, guys. This is like the most fun for me because I know all of this stuff and I've used it, I've utilized it to talk about, I've utilized it to create systems for myself. Now, this is what I was talking about before. People always say, oh, create systems, not goals, and da 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 da. It's just like, how do you do that? I'm going to give you a little bit of a preview of what I'm talking about here, because this is part of my framework of how I create systems. I'm going to talk about this, and then I'm going to show you one of the things that I use, and then I'm going to tell you how to get it. But right now, I'm just going to add this so you can see what I'm talking about. Now, this is something that I've never heard before. Like, in my mind, I came up with this, but certainly it's not anything brand new to anybody. This is just what I call it. And actually, I call it the tear framework because you're tearing through to the best version of yourself. This is the system that I use, that I help people to understand how to build the system for their specific lifestyle. So it's not some like out of the box, ready made, like, oh, this worked for me and it'll work for you. It's like, no, you're going to have to do some thinking and designing, but I'm going to give you the tools that work for me. Now, I'm calling it the tear framework, and really it's a cycle, so it could be any of these things in any order, but I actually would put the R in front of the T, so it'd be what? RT. RTEA framework. But anyway, let's get into it so you know what I'm talking about. Now, we just went over all this information. Some of this stuff you probably already know, if not all of it. That doesn't make you consistent. Finding out information or taking a course or reading a book or having more knowledge doesn't really do it. It doesn't make you more consistent. And I mean, like, sure, you have the intention and all of that, but you still have the gap of how it's going to work in your life. And that's where I come in, because it's not about having more information. It's about developing the structure that helps you to complete the actions so that you can I like to physically cross them off, um, so that you can call yourself the practitioner, so that you can be on the other side of that thing and say, oh, I did it, right? This is the way that I did it. This is the proof that I did it. And it started off for me, I really needed the proof for myself. It wasn't the proof to somebody else. It was the proof that I needed so that I could keep going, so that I could create momentum. And that's the other word that I always use, because wherever people talk about motivation, I don't think motivation is as powerful as momentum. Momentum will get them every time. Momentum eats motivation. If you just, and that's why people say just get started. Now, I don't necessarily believe that's the only way either, because if you just get started and you don't have a system, you're probably going to be inconsistent because you don't really know what to do, what you're focusing on, what's supposed to work. And then when you get to that valley of despair part where you're like, wait a minute, where was I? What am I supposed to be doing? Then you're going to give up and go back to what is familiar. I know this because I've done it so many times, which is why I built all of these things around something that's going to work for me. So we have the books, we have the science, we have all the articles, we have all the videos, we have all the podcasts telling us exactly how our brain works and what to do about it and all the stuff. But then we don't know what to do. And then we start something and then we don't continue it because it doesn't fit us, right? We're trying to fit all of that stuff into something that doesn't work. So you really have to build this framework around yourself. So this is why I go by, and you're going to hear me reference it all the time. I call it my Tenby Tango system. Um, and I just like to work in threes and tens. I don't know why. They're just simple. It's easy to measure. And I'll just break it down here, the numbers. A year is too far. Like sometimes I'll start what do you call it? Like a New Year's resolution. And first of all, you gotta, a lot of people just wait till the new year and you do all the bad stuff in the holiday season, like eat all the cakes and cookies and pies. And you say, oh, I'll start next year. And this year was a perfect example of why that doesn't work for me. Because in January of this year, our whole house got taken down. We were sick. And so all of the things that I had decided I was going to start on January 1st, done. We was down bad. We was in the bed, y'all. We was trying to just make it. We had a fever and everything, all of us. So anyway, a year is just too far. It's too far away to feel real. It's like, yeah, next year this time. Now I do appreciate the power of visualization and being able to have that as like I use it like a time machine. Like, yeah, this time next year, this will have taken place, this will have taken place, that will have taken place. But I need that information that I just listed, the things that will taken place, so I can put it back into my system so that I can break it down and be looking at those goals. So like I said, threes and tens. Everything has a beginning, a middle, and an end. So I always think about like those are the threes, but then tens, I just think they're so helpful in measuring. So what I do is you heard me if you've seen one of my check-ins, I go on these 100-day quests. So I'm like, I'm going to change this or I'm going to be 100 days better in this way. And then I define that, I create the system, which I'll tell you about in a later video, but I'll tell you now like the tools that I use. I'm like, I'm going to be 100 days better at blank, starting whenever I decide to start the 100 days. And you have three opportunities then in a year with some change to sort of like devise your plan, to revise your plan, to, check in and do all of these things. Like that's three opportunities in a year. Whereas, and I know this is other book, the 12-week year, and they do something similar to this, but I don't like the numbers with the 12-week year. It's like too much to keep up with. It's too much focus. I can't. I need 100 days. I'll be 100 days better in 100 days. And this way I can measure it better because now I'm checking in every 10 days. So there's 10 check-ins and I can change things right then and there. And I can see my percentage. Because if I'm saying like, okay, I worked out 6 out of 10 days, it's like a 60%. Now I'm not trying to work out every single day. So that's actually good for me. But if let's say I'm trying to drink 100 ounces of water every day, that means, okay, it's easy for me to measure. I did that 7 days out of 10. So that means I'm at 70%, right? So it's like, these are the types of things I'm talking about when I talk about working in threes and tens. It's just easier to measure. Also, you're going to hear me say this 1,000 times if you follow me, which you should. You should follow my channel because I have a lot to discuss with y'all. And it's just stuff that, we're all going through in life. But you're going to hear me say this. There's 1,000 minutes in a day. If you wake up at 7:40, 7:20 a.m., there's 1,000 minutes until midnight. And that is your currency. What can you do in 1,000 minutes? Now, I'm not saying lock up your whole schedule, okay? Because I don't agree with that. But you have 1,000 minutes and you can use them. And this was helpful to me when I feel like, you go to work. So first of all, you get up, you gotta, get yourself together, shower, have your coffee, do whatever you have to do, get out the door or get logged into your job, however you're, managing it. And then there's a certain amount of time that you've already bartered away, right? Like you're working a job, you're commuting to a job, you have to drop your kids off somewhere perhaps, or, you have these projects that you got a book club or you got a Bible study and you've given this, you've already told people that you're going to give them your resources, your time. I understand that, but out of 1,000 every day, it's hard to make an excuse to say you can't carve out some for the things that you say matter. So that's why I'm big on like there's 1,000 minutes a day, and you have all the control over that. Now you have made some. We all have. We've all made some contracts there, especially if you have a job or if you have kids. It's like, oh yeah, some of those 1,000 minutes are already accounted for, right? So I'm not saying you just have all day to just do whatever, but you can use the system to determine how many of those minutes are available to you and make the best use of them because a lot of them just slip away 20, 30 minutes at a time scrolling or just being, having low energy, having people in your life that drain your energy or listening to stuff that doesn't serve you and it's actually sucking your resources, and then you don't you can't piece together what you need to make happen what you want to happen. So anyway, let's get into this tear framework. So like I said, I actually put the R in front, but it's tear. Okay. TEAR. We're tearing through the best version of ourselves. First thing that I like to think about is reminders. It doesn't necessarily work for me to use reminders on my calendar all the time because some of the things that I'm reaching for are aspirational. So it's not appropriate for me to say, oh, I'm going to do this and this and that, put it all on my calendar. I've tried that before. And the reason it didn't work is because then it's not an accurate accounting of what actually happened. But then I don't want to take it off because I still want to do it. I needed somewhere to reference what am I supposed to be doing right now so that I can make a plan based on like what's more important, the things that are popping up that I didn't plan, or or the things that I planned that I want to become better at. And so that's where I'm gonna introduce one of the tools that I use for the reminders part that has really been useful to me. But let's get through what the T, E, and A stand for. So reminders, you definitely need reminders in any system. These are the four things you need in a system. That's why I call it the TEAR framework. You need tracking, right? Because you're not going to remember everything that you did, and you're not going to be able to build your system better if you don't have somewhere to track it. You have to see what you're actually prioritizing. And then a lot of times you get so focused into what you're doing, what you should, deep work. You should be doing deep work. Cal Newport taught us that, but you have to be able to make your time visible so that you can make the decision and so that you can track and see like, okay, this is what's happening, this is what's likely to happen again. So I have two things here that I call out: the Tenby Tango Timetable, let's just say that three times fast, but this is helping you to map your priorities so they're always in front of you, so you know where you got to be, what you're supposed to be doing. I couldn't tell you before I started using this, there have been so many times during the day where I would say like, what am I supposed to be doing right now, right? And a lot of times now it's too late because I should have already done it, or like, the day is getting away from me at that point. And it's like, okay. And then I'll remember tomorrow when I didn't do it. And then, more inconsistency. But I think tracking is really important so you can see what, based on like what you say your priorities are and where your time and resources are actually going, these are the relationships that we're going to see what is happening and what your priorities actually are versus what you're saying they are. And that's where the 10-day check-ins come in. So there's a what do you call it? A QR code right here where you can scan and get the bundle, because I have two products in there that are standalone that you could purchase either of these by themselves. Right now, the most useful to me is that timetable, and I'm going to show it to you and show you why after I get through these next two letters. But the time tracker kind of goes hand in hand. I built that time tracker probably like 7 years ago, and I was using it at work, and it was so beneficial to me. It was so beneficial to me to see how much time I was spending on what. It helped me to set my boundaries, to be honest with you, because I'm like, hey, look, I just spent 180 minutes on this. Where is this going? Right. Or I could go back to my supervisor at the time and say, like, look, I don't know how many more resources you want on this, but this is where we're spending a lot of time. And it's not necessarily like gonna have a return. So like we gotta think about that. And so you can see where your minutes actually go. So that was very useful to me. But now I pretty much have like a handle on where my time goes by using this timetable that I'm going to show you. But the easiest way to do this, to be honest with you, I have a bundle in there and you could grab both of the tools together. But this is going to take you directly to the Inject God Stand store, which is me and my husband's brand, Inject God. We also have a podcast called It's the Crazy Years of God, where we talk about, how to inject God's word into your life and what we're learning from reading the word together. Okay, so the last two letters of the TEAR framework are expression. And this is what I talked about earlier. When you take your tracking from a chore and put it into like something that you're looking forward to. It's not like, sure, I love habit trackers and those are cute and all that stuff, but there has to be a part where you're just expressing yourself. Whether it's like, I love to paint or use markers and do like word art, whether it's like a little doodle or something, or just journaling, just talking about my experience, how this thing happened and I experienced it, and this is the emotion that it brought me, right? But your brain is creating this, and now you are the factor. You're not just consuming things, you are creating. So this is where you name what your desires are, where you can be honest with yourself and see what you actually feel about what's happening around you. It's not a fantasy. It's not like a, you can certainly write out your visions and get clarification and clarity on where you're going, but it's not some woo woo like fantasy stuff. It's like this is your real experience and expression, and you're clarifying it to yourself. Another person that speaks well about this is Ryder Carroll, the developer of the bullet journal. He's created the bullet journal, and he talks about how it's a mindfulness practice, and he does this thing called rapid logging. I think that's a great way to do this. The expression piece of this is like, I would suggest that, you use an analog system for the expression part, because your hand and your brain work together, and then you can really have an artifact that shows you who you are on that page when you go back for it. So I mean, and they also have this, I mean, if you're a digital person, that's fine. There's a journal that I noticed in my iPhone. There's a new app that comes with the actual thing, and it's a journal. And sometimes I use that, put some pictures in there and stuff. But the act of expression on paper is chef's kiss. 10 out of 10 recommend. Okay, and the last piece is the accountability. Now, accountability is not exactly what we might think it is. I think a lot of us think we have to beat ourselves up and we have to hold ourselves accountable and be mean, like you didn't do this and now you owe me your, whatever. It's just accountability is simply saying, here's what actually occurred. I'm responsible for the resources that went into that. I made the choices. And I can make a different choice, but this is what actually happened. So, but it is necessary for you to have that time in that space to hold yourself accountable, to say, okay, time's up. This is what happened. I liked it or I didn't. This is what I could do about it, right? Because you have control over what you're doing. A lot of us go through and we don't recognize that. We don't give weight to the fact that like we do have control over some of our resources and a lot of our resources and our decisions, right? It's just that we're used to doing the same things over and over again because they're comfortable, or we feel like doing something else is risky. But we have to be accountable that everything that we've done up until this point is the reason why we're here, right? And you can make a different choice. You can move your body wherever wherever it will go, wherever you can take yourself. Now, I'm not getting ready to get up and do that. I'm going to make what I have work. But my point is, you have to be accountable. You have to understand that like you're responsible. You can do something about it. We just need to, I feel like we need to be kinder to ourselves. Like, look, here's what I did, here's why. And that's why that tracking and that expression and journaling comes into handy, because then you can say, okay, here's why I did that, because that was the priority at the time. This is what I was feeling. Or I keep doing this, I keep reaching for that because this is triggering me. And then you can have an accounting of it and say, okay, well, when that triggers me, then you can do one of those if wins, right? If that triggers me in the future, then I'll do this. That's when I'll implement this strategy. But the accountability is the piece that you see me doing that 10-day check-in, because when 10 days is up, okay, we got to check in, because I can't wait and have it go to the end of the month and then feel like, oh, I got to start over, because that's not being accountable. That's saying, I don't know where the day went. I don't know where the month went. I have to start over. No, we're not doing that, because then that gives us ability to walk away from the choices that we can make. And I think that this framework helps you build a system. So anyway, what we do is we're not talking about selling more information, though I do give information. I'm not selling it to you, but we're helping you build the system. So the digital tools and the analog practices that we highlight is going to take us from having all the information that we know we have to actually putting it into practice and actually getting on the other side of consistency. I'm going to show you um what do I want to show you? Oh, I don't want to show you my real one. I'll show you the copy of, yeah, let's share this one. I'll show you what this looks like. This is the Tenby Tango Timetable. So let's share this. All right. I hope you can see it. This is what helped me go from not knowing where my time went to being more accountable and being able to map things out and show up where I needed to be. So I'm just going to walk you through this for a second. This is so every month I just basically, a lot of times now that I have it down, and this is not my actual one, this is just an example, but basically the work that is required is most of the time everything just lines up and all I have to do is copy and just like duplicate the tab and then change the days of the month at the top so that it lines right up. Um but this on the left side is everything that I pretty much do in a regular day, right? It's like this is where I need to be in quadrant 6, and you'll hear me talk about a lot of these quadrants and stuff too, but this is where I need to be at 6 a.m. This is where I need to be at 9 a.m. This is where I need to be here. This is the time I can take a walk. This is the time I need to have breakfast. This is da 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 da. This is my ideal day. Now, these things don't get done every single day. You know what I'm saying? That's why you need to track. But there's also things that happen based on what day of the week it is. Oh, it's a Tuesday. I have a meeting. Oh, it's this time. I'm going to work on my digital products. Oh, it's a Saturday. It's time to plan and do laundry. Right. So it's like, okay, now everything that all the systems that I have in place who are telling me who I'm going to become, who I'm becoming, now they have a place to go. Now try putting this on my calendar. I know you might be thinking that. Why not just put this stuff on your calendar? First of all, there's no space for an ideal day on your calendar. And I literally look at this every single day. Okay. Like, okay, it's not every single day. Sometimes on the weekend, I don't look at it because I'm already, into my day and I know what I need to do. I know I need to eat a breakfast and stuff like that. But for the most part, I would say probably 5 to 6 days a week, I'm looking at this because I need to see at some point in the day, like, wait, what am I supposed to be doing right now between this time block? And then sometimes I really do forget, like, oh, it's Tuesday. Sometimes I forget the day of the week, but I'll go and I'll look and I'll be like, oh, I need to make sure to prepare this for this thing that's coming up. A fun thing about this too is that once you copy it and you're in the current month, then you could go in and just plug things in and still have your most previous one that you could look back on if you want to make um, you know, like if you want to reference it. But this helps me make better choices and decisions because just with the whole threes and tens thing, I always do things in a 3 point rule. I talk about it like a 3 point rule. If this is my outcome date that I want to do this by, then what are the 2 points before that that I could have worked on it? So that's why deadlines don't creep up on me. Projects don't get sort of ignored until they're due because I'm always having a 3 point rule in play where I'm like, okay, this is due on the 24th. That means sometime on the 20th and sometime on the 16th, we're going to be starting and working on this thing. So yeah, this is just like a very simple thing. Now I've put some formulas in some of this stuff. I don't think this is the one that's heavy formulated, but I also link my calendar. I also have a thing where I've linked my it's not in this one because this is just a sort of an example. I put my due dates at the top because I'm not likely up doing anything at 4:30 in the morning, but I do need to know that something's due on the 24th and something's due on the 9th. But you just make it your own. And then once you are done with this month, you just duplicate it and then you start all over again. When I first fill this out, it probably takes me like probably 10 or 20 minutes if I'm starting from scratch because I'm just filling in all the things that happen on a Wednesday, happen on a Saturday, right? And it kind of evolves as you go along because some of this stuff is going to change. But it's just a useful tool. My life has not been the same. I've been more calm, understanding like everything has a place. And after having used this. And so whatever I have a system in place and I'm like, this is what I'm doing with my life, my schedule shows that. That's who I am, right? My schedule shows that I'm building digital products. My schedule shows that I'm a person who wakes up and works out. I'm a person who, you know, has a healthy snack, who drinks their water, right? Like my schedule is showing that. And some of the stuff is going to be aspirational. It's not going to be true at first, which is why this is the perfect place for it because it's like this is what I'm reaching for. This is what I'm designing my life to be. Life is going to happen. Sometimes these things aren't even going to go down like that because you needed to plan better. But you learn that along the way and you have a place to collect it. And then there's a place to put links and stuff in. I was using this as a tracker at one point, but I actually prefer my tracking analog. So, okay, there's one other thing I want to show you on this, which is like the best part of this. This is called the year at a glance, right? I love to see this in this way because it helps me to dream and see like how many days are in between now and my desired like outcome date. So like I was going through this the other day when I was putting it together. At that point, it was like day 156 of the year, so it had to be June 5th, okay? So I was like, "Oh, let me just record that. It's day 156. I'm gonna be 100 days better in 100 days." So what's 156 plus 100, right? 256. So then I go down here and I find 256. And this is why it's so great because you can see the number of days that have passed after each month. And the days of the month just go right across and you can see where the weekends land and all that. You can put your paydays in here. I just put some dummy paydays in there, but this allowed me to see like, okay, in 100 days, I'm going to be 100 days better. When is that? So I got to go down, count them out. Well, I used the tracker on the side to tell me how many days. And then I just was like, okay, so day 256 is somewhere in mid-September. So when I'm 100 days better, this is what's going to be happening, right? Pumpkin spice lattes are coming back. It's going to be a little brisker than it was in the early summer when I wrote this. Well, it wasn't even summer yet, but you know what I'm saying. It gives me an opportunity to visualize and time travel and say, okay, this is where I'm going to be better. These are the points at which I will have seen some progress, right? And then I go use my 3-point rule, right? Like, okay, what's 30 days into that? What's 35 days, right? So I'm just like it's a useful tool for me to visualize. Also, just to put some things in there, like, okay, we're going on vacation, or it's the Christmas holiday, or I have an event, and I'm popping all of that stuff in there, and it allows me to see everything at once. And then, of course, whoever I'm becoming, I have proof of it in my timetable. So anyway, wanted to show you that because that's one of the things that is helpful for us to actually be consistent. And that's why I'm inviting you to come along on this journey with me. I'm going to do my 10-day check-in, I think, in about 5 more days now. But I always do, well, maybe 7 more days because I always like to do my check-in and then I present out after I do my own check-in to myself. But yeah, I just wanted to show y'all that because you're not the only one out there who is struggling with consistency. I feel like a lot of us are. And I found some things that I think will work. So I'm just putting this back up here again. If you want to grab some of those tools out of our digital store, it's our Inject God um, digital product store. And we probably have some other stuff in there too, but I don't know if I took that down because we had some merch up there at some point. But yeah, if you want to grab those digital tools and get started being consistent and checking in with me every 10 days or, just watching our content, you can just scan this QR code and get linked right up to those digital products. But I so enjoyed having hung out with y'all today. Thank you for letting me go through my little, presentation. I love just talking about this stuff. Like this is like, I, I geek out on this. So anyway, thank you for joining my live. I'll see y'all next time. Be nice to yourself. Bye.